Hello, welcome to At Home in Dublin with Ricky Porter. This is a television program especially produced by TV35 to bring out the very best of Dublin. We are committed to our city and showing the best features of our city, and we now know that the best features of our city would be the people, our citizens. And so we welcome you to At Home in Dublin with Ricky Porter, and today my guest is Mr. Phil Best, the Honorable Mayor of the City of Dublin.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm doing quite well.
Good.
I'm really glad to have you on the show. You've been on
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, you've been here before. And I understand that you're a familiar guest to TV35 audience.
Yes, sir.
You've been on Pat Terrio's program, Cooking. Not that you have any reason to be in the kitchen cooking, but you and Real Talk. I like Pat. She's a very fine person.
She is one of my good friends. I tell you, we've had a lot of fun doing those shows too. We've done maybe three, and each time one I did with my wife, one I did with my sons,
Is that right?
and then the first one I think was solo.
So you've shown a side of yourself to the TV35 audience, which I think is the side that I have always known. Phil Best, the average man. Phil Best, average Joe. Phil Best, the friendly citizen in the city of Dublin. But today I'm interviewing you as our Honorable Mayor. And I got a chance to have some preliminary conversation with Tim Chapman on yesterday, and that was very, very helpful. Dublin has been in the news nationally. And that's a good thing in the sense that we are acknowledged. I look forward to TV35 and our broadcast extending itself statewide. We're in conversation with GPB, Channel 29 in Macon, and we'll see how that will develop. However, the exposure Dublin has had nationally has been not for famous good stuff, but for infamous bad stuff. For example, a few years ago, the City Council's amendment of the Indecent Exposure Act got national news on NPR, but also got national news on national networks like CBS and NBC. A city in Dublin passing that law. Part of the criticism was that it appeared as if there was just another way of criminalizing young African American men, because they're the ones who wore their pants below their butt, exposing their boxers. Tim Chapman, your deputy chief of police,
Right.
is very supportive of that action, the amendment. I am not. I've shared that with you. But I do want you to speak to that. But before you do, the most recent exposure, which really affected me in the sense that I know how great our city is. I've been here since 2007, and you were one of the first person that welcomed me. I mean, and you welcomed me warmly, and your manner of doing so has been reflected by many, many other citizens in this city. But recently, with Dublin Middle School, a faculty person who made pejorative statements regarding the president. In other words, she spoke in a derogatory manner about the president, and she brought in religion. It would be obvious to most of us that those were personal opinions, but she presented them in the classroom, and there were implications made about those who voted for the president. Nevertheless, it brought the president of the NAACP of the state of Georgia to our city. And now Dr. Chuck Ledbetter, the superintendent, and the city school board really has a dilemma on their hands, because the mea culpa, the apology by the faculty person, isn't sufficient for the persons of the NAACP who are representing the parents. So, having said all of that, We'll get to good news about our Georgia Military College. There's lots of good news. We'll get to good news about our new museum. We'll get to good news about how we have made so much more attractive the MLK corridor. And you and I have talked about all of those things.
Right.
But before we do, I'd like for you to address in your office as the Honorable Mayor what you feel and think about this national exposure, germane to the amendment of the Indecent Exposure Act and germane to the conflict with the City School Board.
Okay. I'll never forget when we did the amendment to the Indecent Exposure Act. It was unanimous vote by council. It was one that had been discussed on many occasions prior to that. When we did it, it was a Memorial Day. I don't remember how many years ago it was, but I remember it was a Memorial Day because I saved a lot of them, but I probably got 1,000 emails and calls during that time.
Yeah.
Some in support, some in not support, some decent.
Some
not so
indecent.
decent.
Okay.
But I guess my answer first to the racial
The racial connotation.
connotation, I happen to bring some pictures. 'Cause
Very
I knew
good.
you're going to have that question, and we'll be glad to share these with Ron.
Right. And we will share these with you at a later time.
This is not an African American group here.
Is this an African American person here?
No, that's not an African American person. And then there's a whole article here about it.
You have another picture?
Yeah.
But are these citizens of Dublin?
No, they're not.
So these
They're
are-
just off the internet. But my point is, our council felt like it was important enough to act on, and we felt like that a community part of
Oh, I see.
part of the philosophy behind it was not aimed at a race. It was aimed at just let's pull our pants up, guys, and have a little pride in ourselves and our community, and not be showing our behinds to the world.
Well, you and I will call a truce on this one, along with Tim Chapman, because if the problem became so difficult that such an action was needed, it's not my judgment call.
Right.
And I have great respect for you, not
Right.
just as a politician, but as a Christian brother.
Right.
Who was a Presbyterian and then met his lovely wife and became a United Methodist. But I'll leave that alone. TV35 will show the pictures that you
Right.
provided us, but we need to give the clarity that these are pictures that you took off the internet,
Right.
and they are not citizens of Dublin.
Right.
My point is that that manner of dress in Dublin has not been mostly by white young boys or Caucasian boys. They've been by African American young men. But nevertheless, we'll show those pictures.
May I say something?
Yes, please do.
Finish the-
Please.
Okay, the other point I'd like to make on that subject, Ricky, is the motion was made to do this by an African American. The second was made by an African American, and the movement itself came from our African American council members.
Okay.
So how people can twist it around to being a racial issue is just beyond me, because I don't think we would. I mean, how do we explain that?
Right. We're going to stick with the issue of race a little bit, but not particularly this point.
Right.
And I'm going to try to make a comment or two, but I'm going to always give you an opportunity to respond. I want you to see why there are implications germane to race, because you just said you can't imagine, you don't understand that. And I want you to understand it at least a little bit. The fact that you mentioned that the legislative amendment to the Indecent Exposure Act was initiated by African American city council persons doesn't make any difference whatsoever. The African American community is not monolithic, meaning just because an African American brought it forward, it doesn't mean that it does not have racist implications. We're not saying that they are racist, or we're not saying that the racial implications that are negative means that they're mean-spirited. They could be simply not very progressive. And so that's all I have to say about that. You know, there's tendency to say that an African-American leader brought it up, so everybody should be thinking that it's acceptable of the African-American community. That isn't correct. During the era of the Civil Rights Movement, we had a major African-American leader, Martin Luther King Jr., but we had another major African-American leader, Malcolm X. Right. They were not on the same stream of thought, but they were both significant leaders. But let's move on. Still talking about race. Yeah. And I know that you don't want to put yourself in an uncomfortable position because there are legal implications perhaps. But speak to me a little bit about the conflict that, and I think that we're going to resolve it. I don't think it's something that's going to bring the house down. Dr. Ledbetter, our school superintendent, is a very worthy, competent person. I have a great deal of respect and trust for our school board. And I also have a great deal of respect for the leadership of the Dublin-Lawrence branch of the NAACP. In other words, I don't think there's going to be an overreaction. Right. But it did get national news. Right. The conflict at Dublin Middle School, where a faculty person brought her personal opinions into the classroom as if it was a part of the didactic academic process. And then to have her husband, who's an elected school board official, to be a part of it by representing or defending her, it just got all convoluted.
Is there a question there?
There isn't. It's just, I just made a series of comments about an incident for you to make a response.
Well, first of all,
is there a question there? Yeah. No, there's no question. No, there's no question.
First of all, I have a tremendous amount of respect, as you do, for Chuck Ledbetter.
Correct.
For Fred Williams.
Correct.
For Reverend Sheffield.
Correct.
And the entire board.
Correct.
Far be it from me, I've got my own business to look after here in the city of Dublin with my council and my citizens to start second guessing their leadership.
Very good.
And that falls under their responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, I have an opinion. Whether I'm going to share it or not, I don't know. But I will say this. Mm-hmm. I think that I tried to remember back to when I was in school, and I was 59 Sunday. And
really?
I can't actually remember back that far.
I will be 59 in November.
Like,
so you're older. Yeah, you're my elder.
But I can remember evangelists coming to the schools and us going to assembly and listening to evangelists. Mm-hmm. I remember starting the day with prayer.
Correct.
In the classroom. Mm-hmm. I remember teachers holding mock elections on the local level and on the national level, where she would actually, he or she, most of the time it was she, but there was one, Samuel Hobbs was my civics teacher in the 8th grade or 9th grade, and I remember having elections and even having student debates over the elections. But I never remember a teacher taking a side of an elected official.
Very good, thank you.
I never remember a teacher speaking good or bad about a sitting president.
Correct.
But that was a different day and a different time. I don't know, sometimes I wish we could go back to part of that.
Yes.
Because I think it'd help us all. But as far as making, I don't know the whole story. I don't think, I think the board does, and I think the teacher and her husband do, and I think the children do that was involved. And I think that it's up to them to work that out.
Very good.
When my husband experienced chest pain, I knew he had to go to the ER at Fairview Park Hospital because it had an accredited chest pain center. Chest pain isn't like a broken arm or a high fever. They treat chest pain like the serious condition it is, and they treat it fast. And it was a good thing we knew the difference because my husband was in cardiac arrest.
Oh, I was fine.
Now he is.
Treat chest pain like chest pain. Choose the ER at Fairview Park Hospital.
We've been talking with the Honorable Mayor of Dublin, Mr. Phil Best, a friend of mine and a good representative of our city. Phil, I really appreciate the way you responded to the conflict regarding the city school board in Dublin. It was a measured response. I do have confidence in Dr. Ledbetter and also in the city school board. And you spoke of an era that has gone by, and we are peers, but that era has gone by. And so what would have been acceptable 25 or 30 years ago by a faculty person is not acceptable today. Our world is much more multiracial. Our world is much more pluralistic. Our world is much more diverse. And one of the things that At Home in Dublin with Ricky Porter and TV35, what we're trying to show, is that Dublin is in the progressive moment of this time. And so we would hope that our elected as well as our educators are on that same wavelength. But just to bring a kind of closure to this issue, the overall issue is the issue of race relations per se. It never really occurred to me to do a program on race relations here because to me there were not any obvious problems, but there were problems that one may say were being overlooked. And I think at some point we may have to address them. My good friend, your good friend, George Rousseau, who did an excellent job for us as city manager, he was one of the first persons that I interviewed. Matter of fact, along with the city developer, Deborah Stanley, and you were on that show. It was George who mentioned that he felt that the issue of race was something that we would have to deal with in Dublin, particularly when it relates to the issue of consolidated schools. There are some who regard the notion of consolidated schools in Dublin as a response to quote-unquote white flight. There are those who refer to the issue of consolidated schools as a way of taking taxpayers' money to spread it out more evenly so that the non-predominant black schools can get some share of it when, however, the issues of decline are in the predominantly black schools. But I don't know. I'm not an educator. My good friend Robert Hunter and I have had some conversation, but are there racial implications regarding the consolidated schools issue, or is the consolidated schools issue more of an economic matter?
Well, you know, for us to say that, and I think when you and I had lunch together, you may have asked, what did I think overall of the racial relations in Dublin and Lawrence County?
Yes.
And I told you then, and I say now, I would grade it as needs improvement. I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's excellent. Mm-hmm. I think it needs improvement. And I think that the people that need to improve it are us as a community. One community need to improve it. The school system, my take on it is, and again, I'm sorry, but I've got to refer back to when I was in school. I am a product of integration.
So am I.
And desegregation.
So am I.
And so we all went through a lot during that period of time to go to school as one community. Well, we're not doing that now.
Right.
We've got a predominantly black city school system, and we've got a predominantly white county school system. Why it happened, or where we got there, or how we got there, to me, doesn't really matter. We're there. And when you're trying to promote economic development, and you're trying to get industries to locate here, and you're trying to get businesses to locate here, I'll ask the question, what does that say about our community?
Very good. Excellent.
I think we need to consolidate the schools. I don't even know that we need to consolidate the school system.
Okay.
I think we need to have professionals help us decide if we need to consolidate school systems. I think we need to at least get to that point that we can talk about a study or someone to come out with a different view than all of us that are here with it every day to say, well, no, really it's not going to be any benefit to consolidate, or yes, it will be.
Okay.
But I am certainly for the study. I'm not smart enough to tell you if it needs to be consolidated or not.
If there is a determination that a feasibility study will be done to determine whether or not there's a move towards consolidated schools, who would issue that mandate? Would it be the city school board? Would it be the city council? Who issues that?
No, it would not be the city council, and prior to 91, it would have been the city council. But then in that time frame, 91, 92, the school boards became chartered schools when I say charter, not in today's world, but Dublin has a charter.
Dublin High School has a charter.
The city school systems has a charter to be a school system.
Correct.
If they were to dissolve that charter tomorrow for whatever reason, then Lawrence County would be obligated to educate the students in our community.
Right. Let's pause for a quick moment.
All right. Thank you for coming. I'll be back shortly.
Dad, I'm losing my house. What should I do?
Son, your mother and I were there, and Lumen Earl filed a Chapter 13 for us. He even set up a payment plan we could afford. He saved our home, and he kept my check from garnishment. Give Lumen a call. I'm sure he could help you too.
Lumen Earl, solving people's financial problems for over 30 years. Call today for free consultation.
We have been talking with our Honorable Mayor, and this first part of the conversation has dealt with matters that I would regard as having racial implications, but they have as just much economic implications as well. And we're going to move on, but I think the reason why I brought up about the amendment of the Indecent Exposure Act and the Dublin Middle School controversy with the city board member, and also the prospects of the consolidated school system, is because what we do in these areas will give us national exposure. Time magazine, and we'll let our TV audience see this cover of Time magazine, has a very well-written article entitled Black Lives Matter. There just seems to be a need for us to be more attentive to the dilemma facing young black African-American men. And the way I'm going to segue into this is going to be in this manner. I think that the overall responsibility for addressing the major concerns in the African-American community is on the shoulders of the African-American community. And I think also that the primary leadership should come from our African American churches. I interviewed Charles Manning a few shows ago, who was the last principal of the Oconee High School. And he seems to agree that there needs to be more leadership coming from our churches. But having said that, when you and I spoke before, when you had a real need to hear from the community, you asked the pastor of First United Methodist and the pastor of Washington Street Presbyterian Church to bring together religious leaders for the purpose of having conversation with the mayor. Well, it didn't go so well when we did it. There's just a lot of difficulty bringing the churches together, whether they're the black churches or the white churches. Certainly there isn't a consortium of black and white churches that come together. Then there might be one in the Baptist perspective, but I don't even know how strong that is. My point is, how are you doing with getting the dialogue going that you want to get going with the community? I understand that you had a very significant and successful interaction at with Dr. Fred Williams' church.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, that's correct. And
Turkey Creek Baptist Church.
Turkey Creek Baptist Church. And let me back up and say, this is not all about just you and Thad not being able to bring it.
So I didn't identify myself with that.
Well, I do.
Thad is the pastor of First United Methodist, and I am the pastor at Washington Street Presbyterian Church.
But
and we failed the mayor.
Well, let me tell you, the mayor failed.
No.
Because I've been trying for 16 years to get a group together from the faith-based community on a routine basis to let's talk about our community and what we need, and to talk about some of the things you're talking about right now. I mean, let's sit down and do it. I failed, but Fred Williams didn't. Fred, who is also, I don't know if you realize it or not, but Fred is also the assistant superintendent.
Yes, I do know that.
Systems. He is the chairman of the Dublin-Lawrence County Economic Development Authority. And most of all, he's a dear friend of mine, just like you are.
Correct.
And I think the world of Fred. But Fred, without any prodding from me, put together a program at his church about 3 months ago, and had leaders from the community. And that's another thing, Ricky. I think we've got to quit saying from both communities.
Okay.
We have one community.
Okay, I'll take that correction.
Yeah. He brought leaders from the community to talk to young people about everything from school to what do you do if the police stop you, to common sense stuff. We had a roundtable discussion.
You had Tim Chapman there, an African American person.
Wayne Kane,
Deputy.
the district attorney's office was represented there. The city was represented there. The county was represented there. The faith-based community was represented there, and it was one of the most productive events I've been a part of in that realm.
Could you give me a sense of how many people were there? 50, 100, hundreds. You had hundreds.
Hundreds. They had buses carrying us.
Wow.
They did. Fred, there's Blue Water Baptist Church
Correct.
right on the corner.
Correct.
And then
Turkey Creek is
right there. They jointly did this project.
Oh.
And they came together, and it was one of the most well-organized,
wow,
well-attended,
wow,
well-received events I've ever seen. And what we left there was it's not going to stop there.
And there was a theme, something about winning our community back or something? What was the theme of?
Tim Chapman has taken our community
Or
back.
taking our community back.
But I will say that I support what Fred did, and Fred will be the first to tell you he is not by himself in that. He had a lot of help from his church and from the leadership at the Blue Water Baptist Church. But we're scheduled, and I don't know the date, but we're scheduled to have a follow-up meeting at least once a quarter.
Wow.
And we've got to improve race relationships, we've got to continue having events like Fred Williams had. He got it. I mean, I'm not going to say what I did wrong or you did wrong or what Thad did wrong. I'm going to say Fred Williams got it, and he put it together, and I'm very proud of that fact, and I'll support him any way I can.
Well, I need to sit down and have some conversation with Dr. Williams.
Yeah.
He's a peer and a dear friend,
Yeah.
and I think the world of him as well.
Yeah.
You have been visiting with the Honorable Mayor, Phil Best, the mayor of Dublin, Georgia, at home in Dublin with Ricky Porter. The producers and editors of TV 35 will make this conversation a two-parter, and they'll determine that, part one and part two. But we hope that you will respond to us. We invite your comments, either telephoning us, emailing us. You will get information on how to reach us. We want to hear from you. It is important that we hear from our viewers. We want to know your questions, your concerns.